So today we have a new member of the family. This is a 2009 Art Lutherie Cedar Antique Burst, and left-handed, of course. What we're going to do today is, because we just got it, we're going to give it the once over. I just picked it up off of Facebook last week. Fairly good deal on it. Today we're going to clean it up, do a setup on it because it's really high action here. The strings are a little heavier than I would prefer, but they're brand new, so we're going to leave them on and do the once over. As I say, clean it up, do this truss rod adjustment. I'm going to sand down the bridge to make it a little more playable. At this point, we're first off going to, of course, do the truss rod adjustment and see if that will bring the action down at least into a usable level for me. It's not way too high. Matter of fact, let's measure it and find out. So at the fat E, it is way too high. It's like 2.5 to 2.75 millimeters. So we want to bring that down a fair way. Down at the low E, or skinny E, we're still about 2.5, so it's really high action here, and that's more than I prefer. I'm going to try and get it down to about 1.5. So what we want to do today is basically give this thing a good going over, clean it up, do a good setup on it, truss rod adjustment to lower the bridge, because this is really high. 2.5 millimeters at the 12th is just too much for me, and they've got very solid strings. I don't know what gauge they are, but they are heavier. So what we're going to do is get the capo, put it at the first fret, and that way we can loosen off all the strings but still not let them bundle up around the spindles, and be able to move them out of the way to address the fretboard. We're going to do truss rod adjustment, bridge, all that sort of stuff, but that way we can at least keep the strings for later off to the bench. So the first thing we're going to do is loosen the strings. Now when you do loosen the strings, because we're going to be doing setups, we're going to be retightening, loosening, adjusting the truss rod, retightening, bringing to tune, see how it sits, all that sort of stuff. We're going to be loosening and tightening these a few times over and over. We put the capo up here to keep taut. When you're loosening off the strings and you're going to be reusing them like this, you want to loosen the skinny strings first. That way, because if you loosen off the heavier string first, there's going to be added pressure on the skinny ones, and there's a chance that you're going to burst them. So we're trying to not do that. Okay, so now we've loosened off all the strings. What we're going to just do is pull them off to the side of the fretboard. That gives us access to the complete fretboard for cleaning and that sort of thing. And yeah, nut is loose. So we'll leave that aside. Tusk and bridge are made of tusk. Nut and bridge are made of tusk. So you will notice that it does brown. The sunshine will get that in there, and there's a little dirt in the grooves. We'll clean that up as we go along. All right, first things first, we basically want to bring the head down. So we want this to go down a bit because we're trying to get the strings closer to the fretboard. So what we're going to do is, to do that, you want to tighten the truss rod. Allen key in here. Some guitars have it up here. Okay, so we want to tighten, which means I'm going to go from that side towards myself. What you want to do is basically do just a quarter turn and then bring it all back up to tune. Make sure everything's right. I'm going to probably do a little bit more than a quarter turn. This is rather tight. That's okay. Just don't force it. If it stops, you do not force it. You look at it or have a luthier look at it. Okay, so looking down the length of the board, it looks fairly flat. So we're going to leave it at that first off, bring it up to tension again and see how that affected the truss rod and also the action. One of these is thicker than the other. There we go. Okay, so we're leaving all the tension on there. And we will start tightening. And then at that point, release the dogs. Okay, so now I've brought up the tune. We're going to take a look down the neck. There's still a little bit of bow to it, which is exactly what you want. And now we'll take the measure box again and check the height. 12th fret, we're still at like 2.5. And the other end, still about 2.5. So we really want to bring this down some. All right, when I look at the bridge, there's not that much room for us to go down. So we're just plain old gonna have to do it and see what happens, I guess. It is pretty low there. The other thing we can do is there enough room to bring that truss rod down a bit more yet? It is pretty flat. Okay, so what I'm going to now do is go through each and every fret and see if I have any buzz in any of the strings. So I've got no buzz in any of the frets so far. So that is telling me that I can probably hit up this truss rod one more time. We got a very delicate balance with this one because we have very high string action and not much room to shave off of the bridge. So I'm going to bring this here down a bit more, which means starting all over with the capo, loosening, blah blah blah. Be right back. Now I've heard of people saying that they adjust the truss rod well fully up to tune. That is not good. If you have to loosen the truss rod, that shouldn't be a problem because what you're doing is lifting the head and that will just make the pressure go down. But if you're wanting to tighten, you've got a lot of pressure on this and you're just going to be stripping the truss rod because you're going to be forcing more pressure on it from all the string pressure that's on it. So whenever you do any truss rod adjustment, loosen the strings first. quarter turn each time, because the little bit of twisting does a lot of bit of work on the neck position. Back up to tune. So now we've done the second truss rod adjustment. Taking a look at it, it is still fairly just flat. And I can see the bridge. It still looks like the action is a little high. Take a look at it again, 12th fret. Okay, that time we're down to about 2. 175 to 2. And the same thing here. So now we've, yeah. That was me. Okay, so now we've got this set up a little better. Now, a lot of people will put the cable on the 1st fret, push down on the 12th fret, and see what kind of room we have at the 6th. I have it very, very low, but that is the way I enjoy playing. I have carpal tunnel, so I try not to push too hard on the strings. Therefore, I make it a very low action. Now, we probably are still going to shave down the bridge a little bit, but we won't have to do very much at all, because I am pretty good with where it's at. Just to recap, what we did was adjusted the truss rod. I brought it about a full turn, maybe 3/4 of a turn, roughly. When you're doing the truss rod, you want to do it in short bursts. You want to do a 1/4 turn, bring it back up to tune. A lot of people say it's going to take a day or 2 for it to really settle. I go for it. I make it play where I want it, and then if in 2 days it comes up and it needs another adjustment, do it then. But I adjust it to where I want it to sit. I'm not going to wait 2 days and then look at it and then go again, start all over again. I'm going to put it where I want it. I'll check it again in 2 days, and if it's changed, then we'll do it again at that point. But you should pretty much be able to tell from there. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is loosen off all the strings and see how much we're going to sand off of that bridge. Not much, as my guess, because it is sitting very low as it is even right now. Okay, capo. Loosening the strings. Loosen the skinny ones first. Loosen the skinny ones first. Loosen the skinny ones first. Coffee. So, after we loosen off all the strings, we want to remove them to get out of the way, because we're going to be cleaning the fretboard, cleaning the frets, cleaning the rest of the guitar, and shaving down the bridge. Shaving down the bridge pretty much first. What we want to do is pull the strings off to the side. Okay. Want to make sure that all the strings will completely remove that. And now we do the rope trick. What you're going to do is get a piece of rope about yay long, take all 3 strings aside, put it down through there. Take the tail around to this side, pull all 3 things aside, bring it up. So now you've got the rope around the bridge, not the strings. And it's always good to double check the skinniest strings because sometimes they don't go. Now, we flip the baby over and tie the strings behind her back. Anyways, don't do too tight, just enough to hold them there. Now, flip it over, you have access to the complete fretboard to be able to do what you need to, and you're not going to mess up the strings. There, we'll put the capo back on it just to make sure that the strings don't bundle. Okay, let's take this off here. I should have taken the bridge out before I tightened her down. I'll do that now. Don't have to completely undo these, just loosen it to that point, just so that we've got lots of room here. And then let's carefully remove the bridge. Okay, so now I've sanded down till most of that line is gone. I'm going to check it at a straight edge, make sure I don't have one side higher than the other. And it's good and flat. Now, the thing about bridge sanding, and I will have to show you once I have the guitar here in front of me. Okay, so the thing about sanding the bridge is because you're wanting to lower, like I want to lower a millimeter or half a millimeter at the 12th fret. At this end, you want to sand off double what you want to drop there because this is a constant end. So this is a constant end. This is halfway through the middle. One end to the other. So if you want to drop this, let's say you want to drop it an inch, you would have to sand 2 inches off this end. Of course, that's an over exaggeration, but dropping this 2 inches would drop here 1 inch because you're at the halfway point, so it's half. So that's about the only thing you really need to know about that. Now we're just going to make sure we put this back together the way we brought it out. It's not always easy to do, but there. Now we're going to bring it up to tune again and then double check it and see. So we might have to do this a couple of times to get it right, but if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. That's why I was saying even if you're changing the strings, if you're going to do a setup, do all the setup with the old strings. That way, if you break a string, you still have a good fresh set. That's where, because we're going to tighten and loosen these ones, I'm not too concerned about because they're brand new strings. Still got to be careful, but we're going to be leaving these ones on. That's why I'm being careful with them. Even if we were changing them, I'd be careful just to try and keep it so for the setup purposes, because you're going to be loosening, tightening, loosening, tightening, loosening, tightening all the time. Don't take a chance of breaking brand new strings. Take the chance on these ones. So I guess we don't have to worry about this so much right now. That will happen afterwards. Once we get our setup straight, then we will move all those off to the side and attack the fretboard. So also some people glue the nut on. Once you get all the pressure on here from tightening them up, that's not going to be a big deal. If you do want to, just put a little dab of white glue, just enough to hold it in place until you get it up to tune, because you don't want a big lump of glue in there in case you do have to remove it later. But either way, here we go, back up to tune. Always wanting the string to roll down the spindle into the guitar. Okay, so now we have sanded down the bridge. Nut is where it's going to be, brought it up to tune, did the truss rod adjustment. Now let's check the action at the 12th. 1.75, that's where we want her. And almost 2 at the other end, which means we could go down a little bit here, but I don't think we're going to bother. Now what we're going to do is go through each and every fret and make sure we do not have any buzzing. So C, where is that? That will be right here. So what we're going to want to do is probably loosen off the truss rod a bit. So the only spot we have anything is right on so the very, very bottom and the very, very end. Let's let it sit a couple of days, see if it's true that this is going to relax a little more, and then that might go away. If not, then all I have to do is just loosen the truss rod a hair. But with the action where we have it now, action is pretty much at 2 mil right across the whole thing. So we're just going to leave it for now. If that what we can also do is, while we have the strings off, try and just scrape a little bit of that fret off, the 2nd fret top end here, because that is where our problem is, right here. So if we take the scraper or see if I can get a file and just scratch that a little bit. As I say, it's either that or this will settle in over the next couple of days, and possibly that'll just go away, and I'd be okay with that. So we are now on to, because we did the setup, remember we did couple of turns of the truss rod to try and bring the head down so we could get a little bit lower. The truss rod doesn't really affect the string height very much. It will do a little bit because you are pulling this end back, which is going to bring the string a little closer. The biggest adjustment we did was when I sanded off the bottom of the bridge, and that is where you're going to get your main string adjustment from. Anyways, okay, so here we go next into the cleaning, very cleaning, and we'll take a look at that fret when we get it all figured out. So back to capo. Loosen the skinny strings first. Loosen the skinny strings first. So while we are getting set up, ready for the next cleaning session, let's go over some of the specs of this guitar. It's a 2009 Cedar Antique Burst left for, well, you know. It's an Art and Luthier, which is a subset of the Golden guitars. One of the older ones, as far as I can tell from what little I did of research on this. If you have a Golden brand guitar and you are curious about it, email your serial number and model to info@seagullguitars.com, and they will get back to you within a couple of days with all the specs on it. For instance, on this one, as I said, 2009 Cedar Antique Burst. It's got a solid cedar tops. Back and sides are wild cherry, laminated wild cherry. Neck is maple. Fretboard, bridge, the bridge, because what we did was I always keep doing this messed up. It's the saddle that the strings actually make contacts with, and the bridge is the wooden base. So fretboard and bridge are rosewood. I think they said it was stainless frets, but I don't know, not important. It's got a 1.72 width nut. I would rather the wider one. I have a couple of Seagull guitars that has the wider neck. That's where I'm more comfortable with, but this is what it is. Okay, it's got a double action truss rod. It's got a 24.84 scale, radius is 16 inch, and the bridge or the saddle and nut are made of tusk. So that's all you really need to know on that. Now, while we have it apart, always check the nuts around these spindles when it's not under pressure. Make sure they are tightened up. Usually a 9 or a 10 mil. What you'll need is a deep socket, because once you get all the strings off, you can only do it, of course, with the strings off, unless you have a 10 mil open end wrench. But you'll need a deep socket because these stick up, the spindles stick up high enough that you can't get your ratchet or whatever into the socket, you know, the ratchet or the speed handle or extension, whatever. They go into the socket, you won't have enough depth for it to grab. So you'll need a 10 mil deep socket, which I just bought the other day. So here we go again. Strings around 1, 2, 3. Make sure you got all the strings, which I do not. Again, 3 strings. Flip her over, tie her back. Always have a safe word for this. You want to be courteous. Ooh, too tight? Oh, you like it too tight? Okay. All right. Strings come off of here. The first thing we're going to do is polish the frets and work on the frets. So let's take a look here. There is a bit of wear on it from what I can see. Nothing too drastic. This particular one, they are off a little bit. Oh well, As I say, it's not a high-end guitar. I'm gonna see if I can bring the second fret down a bit just by scraping it. There's a possibility this might work. I do not recommend this, but see, that's where we're having our issue. You hear that little tick tick? I've got this going all across all 3 frets. And just those 3 frets. Go side to side. There's a little bit of a rock. That means that this center of these 3 is a little bit high. So we can work on that. I'm just going to scrape it a bit with this do not recommend this. You should really get a fret file, which as I say, I'm going to get in the next couple of weeks. Seems to be working a little bit. See, it's not there. It's there and there. So about the last ½ inch of this fret is just a little bit high. So I'm just going to try and take the very top of it off. And it is working, but very, very slow. But I think we've got the one that was actually buzzing done. Because I was pushing here and it was buzzing there. And we did have a rock there, but now we do not. So I think we've pretty much figured that part out. Next is the polishing of the frets. For that, what we're going to use is some green painter's tape. We're just going to tape off all the frets right up to the fret board, the wooden part, just so that we don't scratch it at all. And it's simple enough to do if you can find the tail. And all you do is just tape off what is not a metal fret. And I'll see you when I'm done. So all we're doing is taping off the fretboard itself, trying to leave the frets themselves accessed, because we're going to be polishing them with some steel wool, and we do not want to harm the finish of the fretboard. So back in a second when this sucker's all taped up. Okay, so now we've got the fretboard all taped off so that only the frets are revealed. Now we can polish them. What you want to use is, well, different people say different things. What I'm going to use is some 4/0 steel wool, or 0000 grade. It's the softest steel wool that you can get, and it will polish these up very well. I'm just going over to make sure that the tape is seated against the fretboard at every fret, front and back. This was a long drawn out process to tape this off. What I have done in the past was take a playing card and slice a little fret sized hole in it. Lay that on so that you have the card on either side, and then it's a lot faster. And I'll probably do that in the future, but I had to get the tape anyways, because if you ever do this on an electric guitar, always tape off all your pots, pickups, switches, any spot where little metal shards can get inside, because they will mess up your day real bad. So now 40 steel wool. Basically steel wool, but you just have to make sure that you get the 0000. Okay, now all we do is take the steel wool and go across the fret. We're just trying to, if there's any little slight burrs, this will help do that, fix that. It's mainly to polish them up, make them nice and bright and clean again. These ones are pretty good anyways, but what I do say is that this will leave little metal shards everywhere, so be careful to clean up afterwards. You don't want to damage the finish on the guitar, or as I said before with the electric guitar, you do not want these metal shards to get inside your electronics. You can almost feel the roughness of the fret when you start compared to the smoothness from when you finish polishing. Because it does have a slightly gritty feel to it, and then once you're done, you can tell the difference. It is actually smoother. And I spent a couple extra seconds on that second last one where I scraped it down to level it out a bit. As I say, we're gonna go over it later probably and do all the leveling out if I have it long enough. I'm not sure I'm gonna keep this one. I might just sell it, because I have two other guitars similar to it that are a better quality, and there's one's a 12 string and I just can't stop playing the 12 string. So anyway, we go about it. Now, I told you about the metal shards. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it very well, but there are all kinds of metal shards in that tape. You can see that on the other side. That is what you do not want to get inside your electric guitar. Or on the finish. Those are all just little wee itty bitty metal shards. You might even want to use like gloves when you do this. I don't, because I've got hands like an old sailor. But anyways, yeah, if you're a real guitarist and have never really worked a day in your life, then you have soft, girly hands. Anyways, away we go. Next section. And what is up next, of course, is cleanup. So we're going to try and keep all the metal shards as best we can to the tape. We're going to have to clean up afterwards anyways. But if I was smart, I would have put the tape up the sides first before you wrap around. Then when you pull this off, all the other tape comes with it. I didn't think of that until the end, so I'm going to have to peel each individual one separately pretty much. It's the things you learn. Do it in order. It'll save you a lot of trouble in the long run. Okay, so now we're going to get into the cleaning. I vacuumed up any of the little metal shards and wiped off the guitar, washed my hands, make sure that everything's good that way. Now we're going to go back to the cleaning of the fretboard. So, spray the rag. Always make sure that, because we're going to be using a couple of different compounds here, do not mix compounds on the same rag. Always use a different rag for each compound. There's a hydration formula I might be putting on this here fretboard before I oil it, just because it seems to me to be a little bit dry. I don't know what kind of maintenance this got in over the years. I know the guy that I bought it off of only had it a short time. He wasn't the one who made the scratches in the faceboard. Of course, with this being a solid cedar top with a fairly satin finish, it is extremely soft, the fresh faceplate, and will take damage fairly easily. Making this guitar as good as it possibly can be is my main objective. Okay, so that is the spray cleaner. Let's go over the face here. And while I'm doing that, let's grab this, remove the capo, get a little, undo my strings for a few minutes. Was it good for you? Yes. Okay. Because I'm going to pull these pins. There's a little groove on the end of your winder that fits right perfectly in the pins. Pry out. Got to keep remembering to check the camera every so often and see what I'm showing you guys and what I'm not. Okay. Pins removed. Screw it. They're going in whatever order. Strings removed. Okay, let's take all the strings over the other side so I don't mess with them. Just let them hang. Alright. Saddle, which is so low it can hardly be brought out, but it will. And so what was I doing? I was spray cleaner. Won't worry too much about the head because of the strings being in the way. But let's clean out the rest of this body. Now, for some reason I don't understand, the ring here seems to be glued on the surface. It sticks out. So it was not like buried into the wood, not cut in and inlaid. So this was the spray cleaner. As I said, you want to keep the spray cleaner rag with the spray cleaner. Don't mix your compounds. What else do we have here? We have a detailer. Fresh rag. I know it looks like the other one, but what I use for rags is just cut up. Shake vigorously. I just use cut up t-shirt material, cut out all the hems, seams and that. The threads that they use to do the seams and that is a heavier duty material. We want the softest as possible, and so. So, detailer. Oops. Now, I don't know if I showed you that earlier, but right up in the top here is some scratches from a pick. There's probably your best shot of them. We're going to see what the detailer does to them, see if it lessens their potency. I don't know if the detailer is supposed to hide all that stuff or if it's what it's supposed to do, but we're going to check it out and see what happens. It did deaden it a bit, but use my fingernail or what's left of it to get it around the pick guard. Work it into the wood. Does give it a little nicer feel. Flipper, do the other side. Get some on the back. Rub it in. And then check it in the light. Oh yeah. Looks like the shelves of the library. It did in those scratches a little bit. So we'll see how it turns out once it fully dries and gets all put back together. Wah stinkin' la. She's beautiful. Okay, just noticed there's some writing on the back of the head. It says Mountain Music, Hamilton. So that's where this originally came from. Mountain Music, 705 Mohawk Road East, Hamilton, Ontario. www.mountainmusic.ca. Okay, might have to look them up. Do ourselves a Mortsky minute on them. Detailer rag with the detailer. Alright. Now, next thing is going to be the fretboard and the bridge. And we're going to do it first off with what they call hydrate. Okay, so I turned up the brightness on the camera because it's, well, not being brighter. So we're going to take the hydrate. Once again, as I say, this is not a paid promotion. Oop. One drop on each board. Yeah. And a fresh rag. Now, just make sure that we get full coverage on the fretboard. We're just going to let it sit on there for a bit, see if it will soak in. And take the rag, put a little more hydrate on it, and do the bridge. Might just let it sit that way instead of, I was thinking of doing the oiling. Don't know if I will or not. Maybe I will. like to take a bit of the oil to this here spot and see if I can make it a little more less prevalent, I guess is the word to say. There is a guitar wax. You usually don't want to wax the golden guitars that have the satin finish on it. It's a solid cedar top. It's solid cedar because it's soft wood and it will resonate very well. So they don't put a glossy top on it because that would just deaden it. So they're not going to they don't want to deaden the sound. They want to, that's what makes the golden seagulls so vibrant. And that now it's the down part is that it's cedar, so it marks very easily. I might wax this one. We usually don't. I don't do my other ones. I have an S6 and an S12 seagull. I don't wax them at all because you just don't want the extra layer on there. But this one might take a bit just to try and deaden those there scratch marks. I think she's going to turn out pretty good, boys and girls. A detailer rag with the detailer. Hydrate rag for the face, the fretboard. You can almost see where the hydrate formula is actually seeping into the neck, the fretboard. That's cool. So, next thing we're going to do is inspect the insides. And to find the insides, we're going to use a flashlight, which I will drop in there and just kind of let it light up the joint. And camera. Now you won't be able to see this because I can't link my phone to the camera, but take a look around in here, see what we see. This way I'll be able to see just what this looks like on the inside. Okay. Stop. Bring it up. That looked rough. Don't do that. And let's play. Okay, so now we're just kind of finishing off the hydrate, wiping off any extra we had. And then I think it's time to put this baby back together and see how she sings. All right, that was the hydrate. Detailer. Let's give it one more kick at this here little spot right here. Just make sure we get it all good there. Alright, give her a good wipe over once over, all over. Alrighty, there we go. Now, time for restringing. Where is the bridge? The nut. What did I do with it? The nut. Hang on. Okay, so I found the nut. What I think we're going to do is give it a little brush up. Nice cleaning. I will use probably a toothpick and possibly a green Scotch-Brite. I'm not going to be able to change the color. It's brown. It's brown. That's all there is to it. That's all that you can do with these things. After a while, they turn brown. But it'll kind of match the crowing. Heavy E. Heavy E. Sounds like a wrapper. Okay, let's get ourselves a spindle. Spindle down in, string in. Come on, come on. Yes. Oh. Saddle. Yeah, that looks right. Let's double check. Just going to look at the spots that were. Look at the groove that was actually on the bridge, and you'll be able to tell which was the fat strings and which was the skinny strings. Am I allowed to say that? Maybe it should be the more robust, the more full-bodied strings. Yeah, whatever. Next. Okay, pin down in, feel the spindle go past the end. Yes. You always want to make sure that the spindle goes past the end of the what the cockadoodle did I do here? After these messages, we'll be right back. Okay, what you want to make sure of is that when you're putting the string down in the hole, that the pin with the groove facing the string gets to the point where you feel this pin go down, but the string does not go down. That way you're assured that you haven't got the end of the knob on the end of the pin. You don't want that. You want it up here. So it's a little tricky putting these in when the strings have been used, but yeah, well. Okay, pins are in, pins are sunk. Now, let's bring her up to tune, boys and girls. Be right back. Always making sure that your strings wind down the spindle and into the head of the guitar. So I put the strings back on it now, and we're just about to bring it up to tune. Make sure all your pegs are planted, and if your nut is not glued on, make sure it's flat on both sides, and that when you look down the strings, you've got the optimum amount of room between the edge of the string and the side of the neck. And then let's bring her up to tune. But before we bring it up to tune, we're going to do the final adjustment that we need to do on this. And that is, on the very end of the paddles is a little Phillips screwdriver that will adjust how much tension you have on these. So with your mini Phillips, you're going to check it. This one's not bad. I'll be okay with that one. This one's not bad. I'll be okay with that one. That one's not bad. That one's not bad. Maybe we have to do these when they're under tune. Okay, well then let's bring it up to tune first. Okay, so now we've got her up to tune. Let's see. Okay, so we still have a little bit of buzz on the first fret, but I think it's the second fret that's buzzing on the low E string. But you gotta hit it pretty good too to make it happen. As I say, I've got one song that I play that has that particular fretted note in it, and I usually don't hear it. So we did it. So there we have it. 2009 Art Lutherie Cedar Antique Burst left. Got to put that in there. Anyways, there we have it. Basically rebuilt from, not really rebuilt, but refurbished and cleaned up and the action lowered. So what we did was truss rod adjustment, which lowered the string somewhat, filed down the bridge, which brought it down even farther. Only note here, first fret on the loud E, big E, has a slight buzz to it if you really push it. But we're going to leave it a couple of days, see if it settles into shape, so that, as I say, I made a pretty big fret or truss rod adjustment on it, so it might take a bit to settle in. And that's it. Thank you for watching. If you like this content, please share, like, subscribe. Look at the other things on my website or my channel. Thank you. Bye now.